clear. Nicola Sturgeon did not break Scotland's ministerial code. An independent report has found the First Minister acted within the rules regarding her evidence to the Alex Salmond inquiry, saving her reputation and securing her job.
I believe I acted appropriately in a difficult situation, and I'm pleased that I have the independent verification of that.
So tonight, ignored and living in squalor. How even after Grenfell Tower, tenants' safety fears still aren't taken seriously. Warning of Europe's third wave. The Prime Minister calls for cooperation to guarantee COVID vaccine supplies and save lives. And the kindness of strangers. How help came 100-fold for a former Marine devastated after losing his home.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Scotland's First Minister has tonight spoken of her delight and relief that an inquiry has cleared her of allegations which could have cost her her job. An independent lawyer concluded that Nicola Sturgeon didn't breach the ministerial code and didn't deliberately mislead the Scottish Parliament. Now, the claims came out of the investigation into the Scottish Government's handling of sexual harassment allegations against Alex Salmond. And the ruling comes just before crucial Holyrood elections. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith has the latest.
Good morning.
A good morning and a good day for the First Minister, confident she will not have to resign.
No, I'm going to do what I've done every day for the last year, lead the country through a pandemic.
Nicola Sturgeon did not break ministerial code. That's now been confirmed by an independent inquiry, and this afternoon she spoke for the first time since being exonerated.
Obviously relieved. I mean, some pretty grim allegations have been levelled at me over the past months. They've not been easy. They've been difficult to contend with. I have been at peace with my own conscience on all of these matters. I have been very clear in my own mind that I acted appropriately and did not breach the ministerial code.
This inquiry, led by Irish barrister James Hamilton, examined the First Minister's behaviour. The most serious allegation was that she knowingly misled Parliament over when she first heard her mentor and predecessor Alex Salmond was being investigated for allegations of sexual misconduct. If true, the ministerial code says that would have been a resignation matter. Nicola Sturgeon says she simply forgot about an earlier meeting. Crucially, in his report, Hamilton says her explanation for why she did not recall this meeting when giving her account to Parliament, while inevitably likely to be greeted with suspicion, even scepticism by some, is not impossible. He continues, I find it difficult to think of any convincing reason why, if she had in fact recalled the meeting, she would have deliberately concealed it while disclosing all the conversations she had with Mr Salmond. The First Minister will still face a vote of no confidence in Parliament tomorrow, pushed by the Scottish Conservatives.
Now, clearly people can look at the same evidence and come to a different conclusion, and James Hamilton has done that, but I do believe there have been breaches of the ministerial code. Nicola Sturgeon has not been truthful and she has misled the Scottish Parliament.
There is a second inquiry at Holyrood led by MSPs due to be published tomorrow. That will say Nicola Sturgeon did mislead Parliament, but will not judge if she broke ministerial code.
No one has yet taken responsibility for the fact that 2 women were failed. We don't yet know whether we have a robust harassment policy that gives confidence to women in the future. What's the role of the Lord Advocate in separating those roles? And what's the role in terms of accountability and transparency for our Parliament? These are major issues.
Nicola Sturgeon wakened this morning facing a triple threat from 2 inquiries and a vote of no confidence. This evening it looks like she will survive all 3. The vote of no confidence tomorrow will fail. ITV News understands it does not have enough support in the Scottish Parliament. And so Nicola Sturgeon, now vindicated, will almost certainly stay in post, preparing to lead the SNP into May's election, able to tell the people of Scotland that they can trust her.
And Peter is at Holyrood tonight. So Peter, what does this mean then for Nicola Sturgeon? Her position is now entirely safe, yes?
Well, they tell politicians to beware the Ides of March, and it looks like Nicola Sturgeon has survived the onslaught that she knew she was coming in this month of March. Today was the biggest and most significant obstacle. This independent lawyer-led inquiry could have determined her future. He's come down on her side, and that's likely to give her enough credit to survive no matter what the parliamentary inquiry decides tomorrow, and again survive the vote of no confidence. And she needed that boost of confidence to take the SNP into the election. That's in just 6 weeks' time, when she will be putting herself in front of the ultimate court of public opinion and seeking approval at the ballot box, not just to remain as First Minister, but to get a mandate, a majority here to get a mandate for a second independence referendum. She needed to be able to tell the people of Scotland that they could trust her to do that. If she gets that majority now, then it could be a case of Alex Salmond who.
Peter Smith in Holyrood, thank you. Now, ITV News has uncovered what experts have described as the worst housing conditions they have ever seen. Residents of one council-owned tower block are living in danger of electrocution, with leaks in their ceilings causing floods and widespread mould. Now, it's been going on for months, and the tenants say nobody has helped them, despite continued complaints. Well, that shocked the author of the report into the Grenfell Tower disaster, who told us it shows that social housing tenants still are not being listened to. And our political correspondent Daniel Hewitt has this special report.
No one should have to live in conditions like this. But in this wet, cold, mould-infested flat live Franzoy and her 2 young sons. The bath she once used to bathe her children catches dirty water from the ceiling above. The leaks began 4 months ago, soaking the floors, destroying their possessions and turning their home into a health hazard.
I've had to plug out my fridge since for about 3 months now, because water has been leaking down the back of it into the electric plug, and it shutted off all the electrics.
The damp began 2 years ago, but despite complaining to her landlord, Croydon Council, for the past 4 months, nothing has been done.
I mean, there's only so much I can get angry and get upset and pull my hair out. I just feel like I'm going to kill myself if I continue like that. So I just try not to make it stress me out too much.
You've got 2 children living here?
Yes, I do.
What do they say to you about this?
Mummy, the house is flooding, and are we going to move? Are they going to fix our house? And they're like, oh, are we going to be homeless? And stuff like that.
What do you say to them?
I told them the truth. I said, I don't know if anyone's going to fix it, and maybe we will be homeless, because everybody I turn to, no one helps, so.
On the next floor up, we find the same problems in a different flat where Leroy is living.
Because the mould is everywhere. I've had to move the furniture around so that the water doesn't land on the bed.
This is all mould?
This is all mould.
It looks like there's been a fire.
It's terrible.
Leroy has had damp problems here for many years, but in November the leaking began all over his flat, sparing not a single room.
How long have you had these 4 buckets here for?
Since about Christmas. Every 6 hours I empty them and put them back out again.
Like Franzoy downstairs, Leroy feels ignored by Croydon Council.
I had to keep on ringing the council over and over again to say, what are you doing about this leak in my flat? Eventually they said to me, there's no leak in your flat.
They said there's no leak in this flat?
They said there's no leak in this flat.
And it's not just Leroy's flat or Franzoy's flat. We've spoken to several residents in this block who say they've experienced damp, mould, leaks and flooding in the time that they've lived here.
To assess the potential danger of living in these flats,
it's the wettest I've ever seen plasterpool.
We invited an independent environmental hygienist to carry out an inspection.
We've got a really, really high risk of electrocution here.
Really?
This is the sort of flat that I would have expected to see in a rundown area in the 1970s.
We showed what we found in this South London tower block to the expert who led the review into building safety after the Grenfell fire.
I don't think I've ever seen anything that bad.
She told us that the culture of how people in tower blocks in Britain are treated isn't changing fast enough.
I heard lots of times when I talked to residents in the wake of Grenfell, when I talked to residents in other tower blocks as part of my review, one of the common complaints from residents was nobody listens to us. And that, I'm afraid, is typical. And that's one of the kind of fundamental cultural issues we've got to get over.
But here, that feels like a losing battle.
I feel just neglected. I just don't even feel like I'm human, like.
And just how many others across Britain are tonight still being ignored.
Wow. Jaws hitting the floor all over Britain. Astonishing.
Yep.
Shocking pictures. What have Croydon Council said about this?
Well, for 5 months, residents have been telling them desperately what's been happening in these flats. Nothing changed. Within 24 hours of ITV News contacting them, they sent inspectors round. They moved Franzo and the two boys and Leroy out of their flats, and they are now in temporary accommodation. They have apologised sincerely to both of them. They say the conditions there are unacceptable and they are going to fix them immediately, they say, and an investigation is underway into how this was allowed to happen. Now, Croydon Council declared itself bankrupt in November. They say that the disrepair, the squalor of those residents have been living in has nothing to do with their financial situation. We know, though, that those residents aren't alone. In Britain, around 500,000 people are living in substandard social housing, 200,000 of them in places with damp and poor electrics and fire hazards. The wider fear here, Mary, is that with councils more cash-strapped after COVID, that picture is only going to get worse.
Terrible. Dan, thank you very much. Now, the Prime Minister warned today that the third wave of coronavirus sweeping mainland Europe could soon be felt here. It came as Boris Johnson told EU leaders that international cooperation over vaccine supply is vital to stop the virus killing more people. The EU is due to meet on Thursday to discuss whether to ban exports. Now, the latest figures show that in the UK, almost 30 million people have now had their first dose of vaccine. 5,342 new infections were reported and there were 17 further deaths. That's a big fall, though, on last week. Here's our political correspondent, Romilly Weeks.
The vaccine programme, which delivered a record 27 jabs a second yesterday, is providing a much-needed dose of optimism to the UK. Yet supply issues are already having an impact on the ground, even before the threat of a vaccine blockade by the EU.
We're actually going to have to shut down for a week or two just because we don't have enough supply.
The speed of the rollout here so far has not been matched in the EU, and the Prime Minister warned today that with cases rising across the continent, that poses a real threat to Britain.
On the continent right now, you can see, sadly, there is a third wave underway, and people in this country should be under no illusions that previous experience has taught us that when a wave hits our friends, it I'm afraid, washes up on our shores as well.
In France, lockdown restrictions have been tightened already. Germany and Belgium are poised to join them. Against a backdrop of anger about the slow progress of the vaccine programme, EU leaders will discuss on Thursday whether to block some vaccine exports to the UK.
We expect AstraZeneca to deliver the doses to the European Union that have been contracted. Contacts are ongoing with the company.
The row centres on AstraZeneca, which has manufacturing sites in 6 European countries. The EU say they'd been expecting 90 million doses from the company by the end of March, but will now only receive 30 million. The EU has also pointed out it sent 10 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine to the UK without receiving any AstraZeneca doses in return.
The pharma industry is a truly global one where we have a lot of specialised companies spread out across the world and making one small component, one small input. So blocking exports and this sort of tit-for-tat retaliation then is really just going to hurt absolutely everybody.
The Prime Minister said he's reassured today by conversations he's had with other European leaders that they don't want to see blockades. The UK's vaccination programme is still currently on track to meet its targets. But as the Prime Minister suggested today, that doesn't mean that Europe's problems can't become our own. Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
Well, there was more positive news for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine today. A study in the United States showed that it is very effective and does not cause blood clots. And our health editor, Emily Morgan, is here. Now, this is very encouraging, isn't it?
It is very encouraging news. I think in many ways it confirms what we already knew, but I think it will be a huge relief to AstraZeneca and to Oxford University. This was a US trial involving 32,000 people, and the results are stunning. The vaccine was shown to be 79% effective at stopping disease and 100% effective at preventing people from getting seriously ill. 100%. Around 20% of the volunteers were over 65, and the vaccine provided even more protection for them. Now, this is significant because the US authorities were really waiting for this data because they wanted to ensure its effectiveness in the over 65s. There was also a very specific review into the safety of this vaccine, looking at whether it's linked to blood clots, and they found that there was no increased risk of that either. So I think, given the hesitancy around this vaccine, the pause in Europe, the questions about whether it's effective in the over 65s, this will be hugely significant, and it also paves the way, I think, for approval in America.
OK, great. Emily, thank you very much. Well, let's go to Wales now. The ban on supermarkets selling non-essential items is being lifted from today as the country slowly moves out of lockdown. Now, aisles had been blocked off since Christmas to stop customers buying goods like clothes, toys and books. And garden centres are also now allowed to open for the first time this year. For people on the island of Guernsey, nearly all restrictions have been lifted. Islanders will no longer have to socially distance or have household bubbles. Pubs and clubs are reopening and all sports can restart. And in other news, the size of the British Army is to be reduced by 10,000 soldiers. The Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, said the move would not involve redundancies but aim to make the whole force more productive. It's part of the Defence Review by the government, which also includes a reduction in the use of tanks and aircraft. Now, the Home Secretary today condemned what she called the utterly shameful criminal thuggery in Bristol last night. Priti Patel praised the bravery of police officers. 20 were left with injuries, including a punctured lung and a broken arm. Police have vowed to hunt down those involved in the violence and rioting in the city centre last night. From there, our correspondent Rupert Evelyn reports.
Disorder and destruction on the streets of Bristol. Police targeted with missiles ranging from bottles to fireworks. Damage to property and people as 21 police officers are assaulted or injured in a sustained and violent protest. From Westminster to here in the west of England, the riot has been widely condemned.
Utterly shameful. We saw criminal thuggery and disorder caused by a minority who put lives at risk, and our exceptional and brave police officers put themselves in harm's way to protect the public.
This is about selfish, self-centred, self-indulgent individuals engaging in their fantasy of being revolutionaries.
Yesterday's protest began peacefully. Thousands concerned by planned increases to police powers and the impact it will have on the right to protest. While these images may have helped their cause, few believe that what followed will have any benefit. Natalie took part in the peaceful protest. She condemns violence, but can see how things got out of control.
If their right to peaceful protest is being threatened, and then they are faced with riot police with shields and batons, that is going to stir people up quite a lot, and it's easy to see how things escalated. I'm not blaming either side.
8 people are currently in custody, but scores of arrests are expected.
After many hours of violent protest, the police and the protesters are in for the long haul.
It may take days or weeks, but police will be patient as they hunt down the wanted in one of their largest investigations ever.
People who caused a sleepless night for many last night, with their violence and their damage and their firework throwing and their stone throwing, they should not sleep soundly. We will be circulating their pictures and we will be knocking on their doors, giving them sleepless nights, and they will be brought to justice.
The scars of violent demonstration have been cleaned up, but the damage runs deep, and it will take time for the issues raised to be resolved. Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Bristol.
Still to come, the ITV Evening News, a dramatic drone's eye view of Iceland's erupting volcano, and how the community stepped up to help a veteran and his family after their home was left gutted by fire. First, why the end of March will mark the end of a dream for many Brits living in the EU. Under the Brexit deal, they can only stay for up to 90 days unless they have registered as residents. And many miss the January the 1st deadline, and soon they will have to return home. Our Europe editor James Mate spoke to some of those affected expats in southern Spain.
There's a reckoning coming for some Brits in southern Spain, and Abby Woolwork is right now having to face it. She's been here volunteering at the Donkey Dreamland Sanctuary in Mijas since the beginning of the year, and like any UK citizen, is allowed to stay just 90 days in any 180 without a visa. Her 90 days are almost up.
This clock started ticking on the 1st of January, and there isn't really an easy way around it, unfortunately.
And the consequences of overstaying that 90 days are what?
Well, yeah, either a fine, could be a ban from the Schengen area, or if not, then there'll always be a mark against my passport.
Abby didn't have a home here, but many hundreds of thousands do. They had a right to apply for residency in Spain before the 1st of January. But those advising them say many didn't.
If you have been here before the 1st of January and you can tick all of the boxes, dot all the I's, cross all of the T's with immigration here, then you will be given a residency here in Spain. If you came after that time or you didn't apply in time, that's where the problems start.
Did many Brits not apply in time?
Quite a few didn't apply in time, yes.
John Shears was one of them. And 2.5 years after moving to Spain, he may be going home.
Naivety on my behalf. I didn't put mine in until just after that, and then it's been knocked back, shall we say.
You're currently appealing against it?
Yes.
So for the time being you're okay, but if that gets knocked back again, you're just going to have to leave the country?
Yes. With hundreds and thousands of others.
Because there are a lot of you missed this deadline?
A lot of us.
Whether you have sympathy with that or not, it's not just a problem for those living here now. Anyone who dreams of buying here, maybe of retiring to the sun, is going to struggle, though there is one thing that can really help. The dream that many Britons have, that's gone.
Well, if you're a rich person, then it's not gone at all, no problem. But you have to have good financial means, and then it is possible.
So for ordinary working people, forget it.
It will be difficult.
Abby Woolwork has packed her van and is driving home to beat the end of March deadline. Brexit is becoming very real for Britons living anywhere in the EU. Citizens of Britain now have no more rights than those of Brazil or Botswana to move to Europe. And that can become much more complicated when millions already live here. James Mates, ITV News, southern Spain.
Have a look at this. Dramatic drone pictures have been released of the volcano in Iceland, which is erupting right now. Now, the video gives the perfect view of the lava flow, which is still very active. The power of the eruption varies, and it could last for a number of weeks. The area around the volcano has now become a tourist attraction. A bit hazardous there. And a UK-led test mission to clean up space debris with a magnet has blasted off. It's estimated there are around 9,000 tonnes of space junk in the Earth's orbit. Collisions with the junk could impact services such as phone services and online banking. And finally, a former Royal Marine says he is a little bit embarrassed and completely overwhelmed after well-wishers donated £250,000 to repair his house. Sean Ivey was forced to flee his home in County Durham with his wife and 2 young children after an arson attack there. Their insurance policy had lapsed, making the situation even worse. But as Lucy Watson reports, the kindness of strangers has got them smiling again.
This was everything Sean Ivey and his wife had worked for. Their home, their car, their caravan set alight in the middle of the night while their children slept in their beds.
The caravan was on fire in the front end of that, and as much as I was trying to put it out, the flames were just getting bigger and bigger.
Sean believes he was deliberately targeted because he spoke out against antisocial behaviour in his area, but the former Marine is unafraid.
Made us more determined to speak out. What more can they do to me? They took everything away that I own. I look at the beam at the top, and that's where my Royal Marines uniform hung, my medals, and it's gone.
The bungalow was uninsured, but the bravery of this veteran hasn't gone unnoticed. A crowdfunding page has been set up to raise money for Sean.
This kind of attack can have a profound effect on a community, of course making them more fearful. But compassion here has spurred them on to raise more than £250,000 for Sean and his family in less than a week.
Absolutely fantastic, the amount of money that's being raised. We're in a pandemic and people are still rallying around. People will have been furloughed, they'll have had no money, but they've still offered to give them them few pounds.
It just shows there's some good in the world, isn't it? There's some from all over the world and all, Canada, everywhere. Just unbelievable. He is lovely though, he's a lovely lad, you know.
We'll get back to that.
And he is so very grateful for such generosity.
Speechless. Unbelievable. There's a lot more good in this country, in this world, than what there is bad, that's for sure.
This young family plans to rebuild their life exactly as it was. Their hope coming from the kindness of others. Lucy Watson, ITV News, County Durham.
Ending with a bit of good news for you there. And that's it. Tom's here at 10. From me and all the team, stay safe and well. Bye-bye.